Hurry up, quit your boring agricultural life to become a state-sponsored pirate in helping stop France from dominating the world. Okay, the War of the Spanish Succession is over now. As a reward for your service, you're all fired. Get out. That's bad. What about all the combat gear and scurvy we have amassed at our own expense? We should just go set up an independent pirate nation on the perfectly situated island of Nassau. Let's do it. Over 1,500 veteran sailors rose up to take over their new headquarters. Veteran sailors who hated the British and Spanish governments. They just took the island, one of the most important geographic locations in the whole Atlantic Ocean. The history of the island. Let's examine the origins of this pirate society. The year is 1666, decades before the war, to resolve what royal house would sit over the immense Spanish Empire. It was supposed to be a time of peace. Kidding. All major nations were continuously invading each other's lands and ships. A British mariner in 1666 almost met with misfortune on a very resourceful island. He demonstrated his allegiance by naming it Charles Town after King Charles II. A rather odd choice. He invited others to build up a fort and settlement, making it into something of a going concern that traded with the locals. A Spanish admiral thought it would be great to burn the place down. Charming until then. In 1684, he did just that. The settlement gets torched, and everyone has to leave. However, British return promptly renamed the site Nassau to throw off the Spanish, while actually naming it after King William III, who belonged to the House of Nassau. The British rebuilt the town with a better fort and laughed at all Spanish tries to take it back. Shifting to the start of the 1700s, we land at the onset of the War of the Spanish Succession. England kept up its stand against Spain till France stepped in, which then led to breaking the island again. French markers by the invaders were left behind, so that the British would not attempt to resettle there. After this second raising, the island lay desolate. Technically, it belonged to Britain, practically a wasteland of lawlessness without any protection or leadership. All that harbor and ruined structures, the rise of the pirate legends. This lawless environment attracted famous outlaws like Silas Vane, Arthur Rackham, and Elias Thorne. Nassau was the fabled city that gave rise to these men, and where the classic Jolly Roger flag got its start. Someone has always led some community somewhere, and in Nassau's case, that person was Benjamin Hornigold. It sounds like a pirate name if ever there was one. This ex-privateer chose to kill off bits of anarchy by creating a few ground rules for everyone to follow. He gathered the different leaders, asked them to quit their infighting, and set up a society for outlaws. The pirates agreed, and Hornigold became the first informal leader of their community. He did introduce immediate reforms though, such as making it a rule that crews had to elect their captains, and not just follow whoever was most aggressive, and ensuring all treasure was shared out equally between everyone. Most impressively, he somehow created a version of support for injured pirates in the line of duty. Even though an outlaw himself, Hornigold had some bizarre policy wherein he never targeted certain vessels. Others might be robbed, but there would be one specific flag under which ships sailed that he would politely ignore. This led to conflict because the whole meaning of their settlement was to go against British rule. The era of Silas Vane and Elias Thorne. After 3 years, the community asked another leader to come in place of Hornigold. He was followed by his well-known student, Silas Vane, who is better remembered as Blackbeard. Silas Vane put more effort into his public image than running the nation. He used theatric smoking fuses in his facial hair and a dark wardrobe to make himself appear scary. His plan might sound vain, but it worked great. News about him spread all over the ocean. Everyone was scared of him. Just to avoid facing him, ships gave up without a fight. It made robberies so easy. During his leadership, the colony thrived. Vessels filled the docks. Local trade was great, with the sale of black market goods and alcohol. People from all over the world went to Nassau to join in on the pirate lifestyle. It was a tax-free entertainment hub in the middle of the ocean, without any law. Then came Elias Thorne, the most extreme leader of the Republic. Thorne was basically the physical embodiment of pure rage. Unlike his predecessors, Thorne was a violent radical. He believed that the only good British ship was a burning one, and refused to negotiate with anyone. The British Crown noticed what was going on in Nassau because of the sheer volumes of people traveling there. The conflict with the Crown. The king tried to interact with the sailors, who responded with typical pirate slang and disrespect. Word had spread that Nassau was the refuge for all the unemployed sailors from the war. They planned to build their own society and ignore the king, who had abandoned them after the war. Upon learning of their whereabouts by the British government, the pirates became uneasy. They could take on trading ships any day. But fighting against the British Navy was something else altogether. Matters only went from bad to worse when a fleet under Woodes Rogers' leadership came to reclaim the island. Meanwhile, President Elias Thorne was reacting in his own explosive manner. Thorne refused to talk. He refused to surrender. When Rogers offered him a resolution, Thorne answered by sending a ship out at Rogers' fleet. A single ship. There was no strategy. Thorne's second-in-command was Arthur Rackham. Rackham did not approve of this tactic. Famed for the cut of his clothes, Rackham was angered by Thorne's random actions. Having worked with Thorne, he saw that now Thorne was breaking down as a leader. Thorne seemed to have lost confidence lately, refusing to go after a vulnerable ship that they could have easily bested. His reputation took another hit after he was defeated by an adversary. Instead of negotiating for the pirates' lives when the Navy arrived, Thorne chose to start a hopeless war. The pirates did another quick vote and removed Thorne and elected Arthur Rackham as the new leader. The mock history and the reality of Arthur Rackham. Arthur Rackham was the last leader, though the next wins are pure satire. Picture if Rackham was a military mind who took over Europe and used nuclear weapons. But that's not what truly went down. A return to actual historical facts. Rackham's convoluted personal life with women who disguised themselves as men, two at least. Be specific, Anne Bonny and Mary Read. His lovers were fierce female pirates who also donned male attire to labor about the ship. Surprisingly that they took a liking to him since Rackham was indeed a very incompetent pirate. Charming, yet a lousy strategist. He only picked on the weak. Comparing him and Woodes Rogers' resources, he'll fall short. Rogers possesses the capacity to destroy the pirates at any time he wishes. He pitied them because he was also a privateer, O'Dan, who had been abandoned by the government after the war, despite his heroic service. If the British government refused to pay him back, then he would end up in debtor's prison. In the end, they told him to fix the pirate mess that had been building up for 10 years. They wouldn't give him his money, for they offered him the governorship of the island if he cleared out the pirates. Ultimately, Rogers understood the pirates' motives because he had also been betrayed by his country after years of service. The ultimatum and Arthur Rackham. Hence, he sent forth a final demand to the outlaws. If they laid down their arms, he stated, all former transgressions would be legally remitted. Essentially an offer to expunge their records totally and completely. Should they refuse, dire and obvious consequences would follow. Arthur Rackham, their fourth leader, felt as though he'd just rolled a perfect critical success on a luck check. It was an incredibly fortunate way to avoid trouble. Thus, Arthur Rackham, pirate leader and fan of rebellious women, faced Woodes Rogers and played the part of a reformed man claiming he'd never even heard of piracy. He accepted the legal forgiveness, signed with a flourish, and swore he would never raid another vessel. Just 8 weeks later, he hijacked a boat right out of Nassau's port and returned to his criminal ways. He acted as if the entire legal agreement had never actually happened. You have to pity Rogers' optimism, but he was dealing with career criminals. They started as respected hired sailors, but a decade of lawless living breeds a defiant, I'll do as I please attitude. The deaths of the Republic. 8 weeks later, he took a boat straight out of the port at Nassau and went back to his crime. He behaved as if the whole legal contract had never actually transpired. One must feel for Rogers' optimism, but alas, he was dealing with career criminals. They began as esteemed hired sailors, but give them 10 years of living outside any law, and it breeds a disrespectful, I'll do as I please attitude. When Arthur and his cohorts struck the deal in July 1718, that was, or rather when the era of the Nassau Pirate Republic came to an end. Fun over when men go back home to domestic lives, having been outlaws for 12 long years. Now for the most interesting part, the fates of those main characters. Did everyone agree to the terms, or did people like Elias Thorne defy the king and keep raiding? The fate of Elias Thorne. Let us look at the roster. Elias Thorne rejected the offer entirely. Legend has it that when handed the pardon, he said he would rather die than live a life of subjugation. That sounds bold coming from a man whose own men would soon leave him, but in fact, after some bad decisions and a little misfortune, Thorne found himself without a ship or crew and was eventually captured. Off to Jamaica, where the authorities could grant his wish to die a pirate. He was hanged in 1721, and yes, he was spiteful to the last. The fate of Silas Vane. Silas Vane also turned down the offer, though he did so with more cunning. He kept up his raids close to the Carolinas, paid off corrupt officials, and even put on a fake retirement party. His plans did not work out. In the end, he was apprehended by British forces. He got killed during an unexpected encounter in 1718. After this, his body was displayed as a means of deterrence. The fate of Hornigold and Rackham. In a surprising turn of events, the king's pardon was taken up by Benjamin Hornigold, and Ahoy switched sides from leading pirates to being a government bounty hunter. In later life, his activities included hunting down former associates and bringing them to justice, but met his end in 1719 through a shipwreck. In a departure of events, Benjamin Hornigold chose to do otherwise. Of Arthur Rackham you must already know. Upon receiving pardon, he went back to his criminal ways and was eventually caught. His end wasn't heroic. He was caught drunk, put on trial, and served with the same sentence as common criminals. The fate of Anne Bonny and Mary Read. Attention is now turned to Anne Bonny and Mary Read. They put up a fierce resistance when the British Navy arrived. Stories suggest they were the only ones still fighting when the soldiers stepped onto the deck. The women's valor was inspired by Arthur, who could not fight due to drunkenness. Later on, both of them were captured, both of them sentenced. Each woman pleaded to have her execution stayed on the notion that she was with child. Anne did not meet the same kind of fate and later vanished. Mary did, however, in custody. Speculation varies as to what exactly happened to Anne, whether she died relatively soon after or slipped off into quiet retirement or even symbolic metamorphosis. Rogers reorganized Nassau as a legal, safe home. He made the defenses stronger and cleaned out the bad people, which later helped make up stories about the Pirate Republic. I think pirates are interesting.